Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey Boyer, and I'm a teacher candidate from National University. Today, I'm going to talk to you about social emotional learning. By the end of this presentation, you will know what social emotional learning is, how it is taught in schools, why it is important to teach social emotional learning in schools, how it impacts academics, social emotional wellness, and behavioral outcomes, and finally, the impact that social emotional learning has on everybody that is involved in the process. So what is social emotional learning? It is a curriculum that applies knowledge, skills, and attitudes to improve students' personal development, interpersonal relationships, and lead students in making ethical and productive decisions. So under the umbrella of social emotional learning, students gain things like an understanding and tools to manage their emotions, setting and achieving positive goals, feeling and showing empathy and concern for others, establishing and maintaining relationships that are beneficial to both parties, and making ethical decisions. So social emotional learning is driven by 5 different competencies. First, self-management, which relates to a student's ability to manage his or her own emotions and behaviors. Second is self-awareness, which relates to a student's ability to recognize when their own emotions are intensifying to a boiling point. Third, responsible decision-making, which refers to a student's ability to think and act ethically in response to some challenge. Fourth is relationship skills, which is that ability to make friendships that are positive, make and maintain friendships that are positive for both participants in the relationship. And last is social awareness. This refers to a student's ability to read the room and show understanding and empathy and concern for others. So how is this done? When done effectively and efficiently, social emotional learning is SAFE. This acronym describes the format and overarching goals of social emotional learning. First, it is sequenced, which means it's a collection of skills that are connected. For example, let's say we wanted to teach 3 lessons on the importance of effective apologizing strategies. So the first lesson can identify the various types of conflict resolution. This could be avoidance, being an aggressor, or being a problem solver. This second lesson in this series on effective apologizing could be discussing the effectiveness of those or the conflict resolution strategies. So discussing how effective is it when we are aggressive towards somebody that we are in conflict with? How effective is it to avoid a conflict? What does that do to solve the problem? That kind of discussion for the second lesson. For the third lesson, it could be a practical application of the strategies discussed in the first 2 lessons. So you could present the students with a scenario and ask them to share what strategy would they use and why. Why would it be effective? Why would they choose that route over another one? So you could prompt a really rich discussion and get students thinking about how they would personally respond to some conflict for this series, anyways, of lessons. So second, social emotional learning is active. That means that it aims to teach students new skills. Going back to our conflict resolution example, that series of lessons aims to teach students to recognize their own style of conflict resolution and consider how effective it is at actually solving a problem, and to get them to consider maybe making better choices instead of being an aggressor, being a problem solver. Instead of avoidance, maybe thinking about, I really need to combat or come after a resolution for this. So kind of switching up their conflict resolution styles. Third, social emotional learning is focused. Specifically, it's focused on emphasizing personal and social skills. The apology lesson or the conflict resolution lesson mentioned earlier prompts students to strengthen their interpersonal relationships by using healthy conflict resolution skills. Lastly, social emotional learning is explicit, which means that it targets specific skills. The apology lesson, again, as an example, explicitly teaches interpersonal skills to students. So why do we need to do this? Well, It promotes the development of healthy citizens by giving them being the students, by giving students tools and teaching them how to effectively use those tools. We are setting them up for a lifetime of health, happiness, and success, because the unfortunate truth is that we cannot expect that students are learning social, emotional skills at home. As educational professionals, myself speaking personally, I feel some sense of responsibility to release students out into the world with social emotional wellness, or at least the tools to gain social emotional wellness. The 3 bars on this slide discuss research-backed evidence for how social emotional learning impacts academics. Essentially, social emotional learning breaks down the barriers that prevent access to education for some students. So students who participate in social emotional learning have improved academic performance by 27% by the end of a program. This is because those students who struggle with self-regulation often also struggle with learning in general. They're less productive and they have difficulty engaging with academic content. Without those self-regulation skills, they do not have access to the academic content. In line with that statement is what Clancy Blair discovered in 2002 when he interviewed teachers. He discovered that students who have social emotional skills are more teachable. That means they have better access to the academic content. The 3 bars in this slide explain research that supports social emotional instruction and positive impact on students' social emotional wellness years after they complete a program. For example, social emotional competencies have been shown to be critically important for the long-term success of students in today's economy. When they join the workforce, they need to learn how to work together, collaborate, how to manage their own stress so that they don't get overwhelmed, and how to resolve conflict so that there's not a hostile work environment. You are more hireable, you're more attractive to employers when you have and exhibit these social emotional skills. There are significant associations between social emotional skills in kindergarten and key outcomes for young adults years later. So social emotional learning decreases the likelihood of living in or being on a waiting list for public housing, public assistance, and having involvement with police before adulthood, and spending time in detention facilities. Lastly, a study in 2017 that looked at 100,000 students worldwide demonstrated that social emotional learning programs have a positive impact up to 18 years later in academics, behavioral conduct, emotional distress, and even in drug use. Okay. Social emotional learning is focused on students' participation in positive and healthy behaviors. The following demonstrates the impact that social emotional learning has on those behaviors. So students who participate in SEL, they have improved classroom behavior. They can manage their stress and their depression better, and they have positive attitudes about themselves, others, and school. These are those students who are more teachable, as we had discussed in the last slide. Social emotional learning skills and instruction create students who can be taught. It breaks down those barriers. It creates positive behavior, which carries on throughout their lifetime. They're learning life skills through social emotional learning. Positive teacher-student relationships that are driven by social emotional learning assist in the prevention and correction of behavioral problems throughout the students' educational careers. I personally was one of those students who had a positive teacher-student relationship, which resulted in my second-guessing my behavior because I did not want to disappoint my teacher and because my teacher had taught me coping skills to deal with conflict. I am a product of social emotional learning based on one student-teacher interaction. Lastly, social emotional learning competencies such as positive peer relationships and classroom norms have research-backed support in preventing behavior problems and improving academic performance. Again, by giving our students these tools to monitor our own emotions and our reactions, to monitor how they can resolve conflict, and to second guess their behavior, and to focus on the academic content just enhances every area of the educational experience and sets them up to be successful citizens. When they come into an environment that is safe, and that they know that they are going to be heard, and that they know that they're going to be taught and have access to the curriculum, they're more likely to be motivated and engaged. So social emotional learning might not be math or reading or writing. It's life skills. But those life skills help them when they come to the math lesson, the reading lesson, the writing lesson. Today we've discussed the positive impact that social emotional learning has on student outcomes. But I would like to finish the presentation with a really quick discussion about how social emotional learning does not only positively impact students, but it also impacts parents and teachers. Personally, I have experienced the benefits of social emotional instructional strategies as a parent. I've had the pleasure of watching my 9-year-old son blossom after his teacher and his school support staff implemented social emotional learning strategies to improve his behavior at school. This helped with his academics, and it also improved our home life. For the first 2 years of his school experience, I felt helpless as a parent. He was a royal terror. No matter what I did, trying to support him or to help him in any way, it always ended up with just more frustration for all of us. The PATHS program, in addition to PBIS, gave my son the tools to adjust both in school and at home. Now, as a teacher candidate, I had learned how social emotional strategies can be really time-consuming in the classroom, but the benefits are so worth it. During my student teaching experience, we had a student who was just experiencing incredible trauma at home. He had a very tough home life. And all throughout his elementary career, he was pegged as the naughty student. My master teachers reported to me that they took a stand against his CUME file. It was filled with countless teacher complaints, lots of at-risk for retention letters, so many just negative things in his CUME file. So they only wanted to look at his academic performance over the years. They wanted to give him a fresh start in their classroom as far as behavior goes. Targeted intervention with the school support staff and my master teacher's promise to improve his classroom experience resulted in a well-adjusted, well-behaved, and academically thriving student who just last week was promoted to middle school.